Mahendri
who's also
Matre
a direct
Namaha,
disciple of Swamiji.
Chamunde Matre
And
Namaha,
we will have
Mahalakshmi Matre
a
Namaha,
first-hand account of their
Sarva
interactions
Sankshobani
with
Mudra Shakti
with
Namaha,
Swamiji
Ammam Aim
throughout their
Brim
lives.
Shrim Ammam Sahu
So
Sarva
without
Vidravani
much
Mudra Shakti Namaha, Aim Brim
delay,
Shrim
let me
Ammam
just tell
Sahu
you that
Sarvakarshani Mudra
we
Shakti
had very
Namaha,
limited.
Sarva
So first of
Vashankari
all, the
Mudra Shakti
biography that's in the
Namaha,
book, you have
Sarvon
to
Madini
understand we
Mudra
had
Shakti
very
Namaha,
limited knowledge of him.
Sarva Mahankusha Mudra
We were
Shakti
very much
Namaha,
content with our
Sarva
picture that
Kechari
we
Mudra
have in the
Shakti
sanctum,
Namaha,
and
Sarva
maybe
Bija
one or
Mudra Shakti
few photos
Namaha,
from Bill Thomas
Sarva Yoni Mudra Shakti
and
Namaha,
Rakesh ji, who
Sarva
was
Trikanda
here,
Mudra Shakti
one of,
Namaha,
yes, disciples
Etaha
from
Prakata
several
Yoginyaha
years back,
Trailokya Mohana
who had
Chakre
gone to see
Samudraha
Kalyanananda
Sasiddhaha
Tirtha.
Sayudaha Shashaktaha
But
Savahanaha
we knew nothing more than
Saparivaraha
that.
Sarvopacharaihi
So,
Sampujitaha
so the
Santarpitaha
biography that's been
Santushtaha
written are
Santunamaha
first-hand accounts from
Aim
his
Brim
direct
Shrim Ammam
disciples
Soho
of
Tripurchakreshwari
Kameshri
Shri
family.
Padakam Puja
The entire
Payami
family were
Namaha
disciples of his.
Kandam Dupam
And we've
Deepam
gotten
Nevedyam
several
Karpura
accounts from even
Nirajanam
Guru Garu
Dattva
and his grandson too,
Sarva Sankshobani
who
Mudram
only knew him for the last
Pradarshya.
4 years of his life, but we got quite a bit of information from him as well. So without much delay, I'm going to hand the mic to Laksan, who's going to read from the Malar, Swamiji's biography.
Hello? 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 Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you. Om Saraswati Namastubhyam Varde Kamrupini Vidyarambam Karishyami Siddhirbhavadame Sada Veena Vadnyescha Vidmahe Pushtakadaranyesh Dhimhi Tanno Vani Prachodayat Saraswati Namaha. Okay. Venkateshwara Rao Pediraju, I'm sorry if I messed that up, was born in 1905 in Munangi village near Tennali in Guntur district, Andhra Pradesh. In the morning, they say between 4 to 7 a.m. on Vijayadasami day. Under the Uttarashada Nakshatram, the date appears to fall on Saturday, October 7th, 1905. He was the only child of the parents, Mr. Kondaya Pendiraju and Srimat Satyavati. He was an educated man with a bachelor's degree. In addition to Telugu, he was very fluent in Hindi and the English languages. He also knew Sanskrit. At the age of 25, he married Jalamma Garu, with whom he had 2 children, sons, Rama Chandramurti and daughter Katyayani, who's 2 years younger than her brother. He pursued a career in the legal field and works as an assistant to a leading lawyer in the High Court till he was around 30 to 40 years of age. The family had a big house and was well provided for. In his early spiritual life, since early on, Swamiji had a lot of bhakti. He was predisposed to spiritual sadhana and used to perform daily homams. His Ishta Devata was actually Lord Venkateshwara. His first Guru Upadesham came from his father in the form of the Gayatri Mantra. Swamiji used to take baths to the Shivalayam, his kids to the Shivalayam every day. To this day, his grandsons use the same very asanas and vigrahas that Swamiji used to use in his morning pujas. When he was around 40 years old, one evening at around 8 to 8:30 p.m., he said that he's going out, and he asked his son Rama to close the door behind him. Swami that day left and never returned. Ramana Maharishi Ashram. After leaving his home, Swamiji proceeded to the Ramana Maharishi Ashram in Tiruvannamalai. There he stayed for about 6 to 7 months. He was doing tapas. However, Ramana Maharishi's relatives didn't like his dietary habits. So they asked him to leave. He then went to the Maharishi himself and asked for permission to leave. The saint didn't know. The saint asked him, "Where are you going? What are you going to do?" Swamiji responded with, "I have no idea. I don't know." So Maharishi said, "Why don't you go to the Himalayas?" Later, we see that there's an account in Varanasi. Swamiji later went to Varanasi, where he used to dip in the Ganga river and do tapas. There, he met his guru who initiated him and gave him Kasya Vastra, that reddish brown cloth that you see them wear, usually worn by ascetics. That's what it's called, Kasya Vatra. And made him Dandi Swami, a stick carrying Swami. The Guruji gave him the name as well as Sri Kalyananda Tirtha. In Kashi, he would visit Sri Kala Bhairava Temple. Since the summers of Kashi weren't suiting him physically, he would seek the blessings of Kala Bhairava to land on the banks of the Ganges and continue his sadhana at a relatively cooler place. Later, he went to the Himalayas and did extensive tapas there. So the next section talks about him moving to Haridwar and building an ashram. After some time, he moved to Haridwar. This is 200 kilometers north of Delhi, near Brahmavarchas Gayatri Peetam and Bharat Mata Mandir at that time. Indira Gandhi came to Haridwar and met Swamiji. She told him about her problems and gave her a Rudraksha mala. Later, when she became a prime minister, she sent her assistants to go find him. When they found him, they asked him what he wanted and that she is ready to fill any wish that he required. Swamiji said all he wanted from her, from Indira Gandhi, was to build an ashram. She told him to pick whatever site he wanted and that she would arrange it for him. He picked a site on the banks of the Ganga river, opposite to the Brahma Vachras Peetam, on which he built the Bhadrakali Peetam in the 1960s. Swamiji lived a very austere life and believed that modern material comforts, electric fan, AC, gas stove, should not be used in the ashram. There is a story according to when Swamiji moved up to Haridwar. Some of the locals didn't like a southern Swami moving into their territory and did some black magic on him. To counter that, Swamiji used mantras from the Atharvana Veda as the protection for himself. So throughout the years, Swamiji prescribed a number of auspicious slokas and stotras for his devotees, some of which he published. For instance, the Sri Kali Kavacham, which was published in 1958, and the Sri Ratri Suktam, which was then published in 1983, were vigorously promoted by Swamiji and was extremely powerful to be chanted for sublime results and for fulfillment. He also used to encourage recitation of Guru Charitra or Dattatreya Charitra. So now we talk about the transfer of the ashram. Swamiji had a number of dedicated disciples who used to live at the ashram and take care of him. One of them was Mata Yogeshwari, who was also called Amma Garu at the time, his first disciple. And she served him for about 40 years until she attained Jala Samadhi herself. Another one was Pillai Mari Kamala Bhavani, who served Swamiji as a resident disciple for 10 years until her own demise. She was married to Bhiksheshwara Rao Garu, a worshipper of Kali Mata. So there's clearly a trend of Kali here, who was one of Swamiji's most beloved disciples. At one time, it was thought that he would actually take over the Peetam after Swamiji had left his body. But Swamiji's hopes were dashed when Bhiksheshwara Rao Garu passed away at the age of only 51 years old. After her husband's passing, she gave up material life, donated all of her money to Swamiji, and lived a life of penance at the Peetam, performing seva, which she did from 1981 to 1992. But as fate would have it, later in life, she had cancer, which prompted her sons to take her back to Hyderabad for treatment. Even in her last days, she used to fondly recollect her time in Haridwar, serving Swamiji, plucking flowers for puja, cleaning the temple, and cooking food. These two deaths were a great, great blow to Swamiji, who had put great hopes upon them. So you can see their pictures actually, if you look at the screen that it's there. Those are both the two lady disciples. So, having lost any hope of handing his ashram over to one of these disciples, Swamiji proceeded with a plan to transfer it over to the Lord Venkateshwara Temple, the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam. But the organization asked him to cover the registration charges if he wanted to hand it over the ashram, and since he didn't have much money, he proceeded to look for any other options that may come. The Datta Peetham. According to Datta Peetham website, it says Swamiji once dreamt of Lord Venkateshwara telling him that he should, after death, pass his ashram to Sri Ganapati Sachidananda Swamiji, who would take care of his creation. This dream was repeated several times over and over and over, and he made several inquiries with his disciples, and then started to correspond with Datta Peetham and facilitated the transfer. It happened over 5 to 10 years, or 8 years, before his passing. M.S.N. Murthy was among those who organized his transfer process, with his elder brother acting as a lawyer. Now, the arrival of his son and daughter-in-law. After the transfer of the Peetham, there was a couple staying at the ashram to help take care of Swamiji. Unfortunately, the care they provided was not all that sufficient, and at the time, Swamiji was actually bedridden. Meanwhile, ever since him leaving, Swamiji's children lost hope of ever finding him. Throughout the years, the Swami used to regularly visit Andhra Pradesh during the winter, every year when it was cold up north. After a number of years of him being gone, one day in Elluru, 80 to 90 kilometers away from his birthplace, people were talking about some Guru Garu visiting the town out of curiosity. These two children also joined with others, went to go see the Swamiji. And when they arrived, the children immediately recognized their father. So you can only imagine not seeing their father for so long and somehow hearing of this myth that some guru is somewhere and they've gone now and seen him for the first time after so long. And immediately, he recognized them as their children too. He says, oh, my kids have come. After that, he never came back to Alluru though. Even though at times he was visiting neighboring places in Andhra Pradesh, he never visited Alluru again. Years after, Swamiji's son got his wish when he was finally able to track down his father down in Haridwar. But that time, both Ramachandra Garu and his wife were already retired, and so they decided to stay in the ashram and took over the responsibilities of caring for him. They stayed in the ashram for 4 to 5 years until Swamiji finally passed away. It is said that till the end, Swamiji never acknowledged his family and treated them the same as his other followers. And you can see there a picture of him itself. So in one of the pictures, it actually shows Sri Kalyanananda Tirtha, the day he left his body. It was about 11:20 a.m. on June 7th, 1997, under the Ardra Nakshatram, a day before he passed. He sent his grandson away. See, that's the picture there, all the way to the absolute right. He sent the grandson away, and half an hour before his samadhi, he called his daughter-in-law and son and blessed them. After his passing, his body was nicely decorated with flowers, placed in a basket, and left in the middle of the Ganga River. And although short, that covers Sri Kalyanananda Tirtha's biography for what we have.
disciples for many years. So please go ahead. You can chime in whenever you want to. We're also trying to upload the video as well so that you can.
Okay.
Yes. Can you see the screen?
Yes. Namaskaram to everyone. I am Kameshwari Ganti, and I am the daughter of Coach Bhatla Kanyakumari and Ram Mohan Rao. They live in Hyderabad, and I was introduced to Swamiji along with my identical twin sister Sita, and we both were introduced when we were about 6 years old, and we would go. So our experience with Swamiji is as a child, and all the way till I got married in 1990, and then after that, a couple of times I had the blessing to go and meet Swamiji at with my family. And
Amma, you're on mute, Amma. There, okay.
okay, so my perspective is my memories are from my childhood, and so I would go with my parents, and we would visit Haridwar during Navaratri. For a few years, we would go there every Navaratri, and we had great experiences there as children because there was a lot of prayers and puja and chanting and japam and parayana, and everybody around us were grown-ups because Swamiji was introduced to my mother by her sister Kamala Bhavani Pillalamari, and then Kamala Bhavani Pillalamari, she's my aunt who introduced Swamiji to her parents as well. And so we would just sit and listen to the pravachanams that Swamiji would present to all of us, after the puja every day. And the ambience at the temple, and Swamiji had built a Bhadrakali temple on the river Ganga, on the banks of river Ganga, and we loved going there because the river was just a few hundred yards away, and we would go in the hours, early morning, before the sun rose, and it's very, very cold, and we would take a dip there, and then we would get ready for the puja, and the puja would take place 3 times a day, and so we had a lot of reverence for Swamiji, and because we were so young and impressionable, and Swamiji likewise, treated us like as if we are his grandchildren, and it was only as we grew up that we understood that he is, because everybody venerated him as divine incarnation. So me and my sister were awestruck by this great divine being, and we loved to listen to him. And experience which I had written and sent to Saru. So this was when we had me and my sister. We had written the competitive exams to get into engineering colleges, and I had a dream one night, and I was so depressed, and at that time because we still didn't hear about any admissions yet, and I remember so clearly, and every time I think about it, it just makes my it gives me goosebumps because it's are inside the sanctum sanctorum, and I was crying, and and then I would hear goddess Kali's voice ringing out, so clearly, and she's like, "You will get your admission in engineering college," and I was, it was such a miracle. I was crying, and then I can't even tell the difference, whether it was real or dream, because it's so etched in my memory. And that's one, and eventually after, a few weeks, I did get into engineering college, and so, it was a very down point for me, and that experience, it's just amazing. And my parents were, worried about my twin sister got married a year and a half before me, and then so my parents were worried about me, and then, Swamiji had Ammagaru do, prayers for my wedding, and I have a blessed life. I feel that it's all because of Swamiji's blessings, and Ammagaru, that she herself prayed for my wedding, so I feel so blessed because, of all the things that happened. And when I was very little, and like I was 7 years old, the first time we went there, I would hear Ammagaru tell that, at nights there is a little girl walking around the, the premises with a hurricane lantern in her hands, and her trinkets, she could hear her trinkets, and so she would say, it is Bala Tripura Sundari who is, walking to protect and guard the premises from any intruders, because the the Peetham is located on the, outskirts of the town of Haridwar, and it's barely developed at that time, and at nights it's pitch dark, and all you can hear is the sound of Ganga river, and it's like the jungles on the other side of the river, and can be very scary, because the electricity also, was not very consistent back then, and I I was very, impressed, like as a child, to hear that, like this place is really, so magical, and that's the impression I carried with me. Sarah,
Yes, Amma.
Sarah, can you hear me?
Amma, can you hear me now? Oh, 1 second. Amma, can you hear me? Okay, Amma. So thank you so much for your recount of your experiences with Swamiji. Would you kindly introduce the video, the 11-minute video that you had first sent us? That's what we're going to be playing. Can you see your screen, Amma? Are you able to see your screen? The screen, rather, of like what's being played here?
No, I am not able to see.
Okay. 1 second. We're going to start the video. Why don't you tell us what's in the video and who's in the video and the time frame?
Yes, the video was taken in 1993. That was the last, it was the second to last time that I went to meet Swamiji, and at that time my sister and I went with my parents, and my sister's family. She came with her two little ones, and my oldest one was 8 months old at that time. So we went there to see Swamiji, and that was the last time I think second to last time, yes. And I took a video of all the surroundings, because I somehow felt I wouldn't be able to be back there, which I did one more time, but I have an extensive video that I do. And I have, I have ready to send it to Sadhu. I got it converted from a VHS tape into the DVD and also a USB drive. So yeah, so that was the great visit that we had, and we felt very happy to see our Swamiji again. And by the time he was not able to, I think he was going into, some what you call penance more, and he was getting this, distancing himself from all of us, because at first he didn't recognize him, then he did, and so